So I'm going to try to explain a newly patented or patent pending OES engine. And this is the basic framework of the cutout. And it's important because it's a different method of generating electricity than is currently available. And it is likely to be a far more earth-friendly engine than what is currently available. So we're going to give it a try. Hopefully you'll be able to understand it. And a primary function of this motor is that we're having pistons that go around a circle. The machine is basically a circle, and there are individual pistons just like you would find in a car that are attached to the outside ring structure of the machine. So those pistons in this particular situation are going to be fired just like a car piston is, only this is a 2-cycle. The bigger engines are a 2-cycle. It can be a 4-cycle as well, but in this function it is a 2-cycle. And what we do is we cause the piston to go backward, and instead of firing it like a 4-cycle engine, which means to fire when the piston is closed and use that force to push the crankshaft around. This would be the crankshaft because in this particular situation. And this is a little piston rod that goes back and forth. So anyway, in this situation we are actually going to burn coal. Not because it's the best fuel available or the worst. It is not, but because the standard gasoline engine needs about 14:1 to actually operate, to actually explode the fuel, and natural gas needs about 20:1 oxygen to explode, or can explode at that point, and coal requires somewhere around 10 times. So it burns less oxygen, and in this world, which is burning so much oxygen that just the fossil fuels we burn on purpose are the equivalent of what 150 billion people need per day, for a 24-hour period. That's what we burn per year, and that doesn't include forest fires and house fires and all the rest. So we really need to, and oxygen is a finite material. It is an element, which means it's an atom, which means that we don't create it. The critters in the ocean don't create it. Trees don't create it. It is released. So there is an end to it. It's not as fantasies assume. Anyway, we do need to have different methods of generating electricity. Electricity is not going anywhere, so we must deal with it, whether you want to or not. So anyway, in this motor, this is a rotating valve. What is blue here basically is a rotating valve. It runs around and around in a circle, and it contains holes for the introduction of exhaust gases into the valve itself, and then it goes out through the turbine and through the secondary turbine and out. But the point being that it all starts with the piston, and the door is closed, or the valve is closed for the piston to ignite. So we're going to use, if we use coal or a 2-cycle version, we're going to open the piston up to about 20% to the close, and then we're going to explode that and use that power to push the crankshaft around so that the piston comes back and pushes the exhaust that we've created out, or the combustion gases that we've created out. Now, the fact is that all of our energy in fossil fuel engines comes from the fact that heat requires expansion. It's not a case of if we don't use the heat to push the crankshaft, the heat or the pressure is still there, and we explode it at the back, and then we can push that exploded gases out into the valve here. So once it opens, it begins to push on the turbine-like vanes that are in here, and they're curved for the purpose of, just like a turbine, for purpose of creating motion because it's a push that pushes those vanes. So this one pushes one way. This one is stationary, so it pushes against that, and then the curve in it pushes against the next turbine blade here, and that's what gives quite a bit of power to the actual machine. And that power is transferred through the valve here, the rotary valve, down into a gearbox. And the gearbox, this is a three-tiered gearbox, or for whatever it takes. Anyway, it's like a ring gear and a pinion gear on your standard rear axle car. And those are stacked together so that we can have numerous pinions operating on them, so that it all runs at the same speed and we can distribute the power across the entire ring gear instead of just one point. So once it gets through the gearbox, which is the timing of the piston itself and the ignition actually fires due to magnetic points of location. But anyway, we use the gearbox to turn the generator. And in this case, now we're going to look at the actual machine, and it runs with steam. So we have a tank at the lower level here that has water in it, and we're going to pump that up into the hollow shaft or the pipe of this particular structure that controls the valve and operates the machine. Anyway, that water comes up here, finds corresponding holes at the top, and then it runs down the tubes into the vanes itself. And that's to help cool the valve, or cool the rotary valve. So it gets down to the bottom of the little lower valve tank here, and it runs up a little standpipe inside these vanes, and when it gets to the top it comes down and it falls into the lower floor tank here. This is a lower floor tank, and it rings around underneath the valve here and has labyrinth seals. Labyrinth seals are like this. They are individual barriers, so that you have to pressures have to go round and round and round. So that contains most of the pressure. So when we have the water in the lower tank, we pump it up into the upper tank, which is part of this particular stationary vane, and then that is let out into this steam generator here, and it's kind of like a locomotive. That it's a small amount of steam generation really, but that doesn't mean that it has to. These are very high temperatures in the exhaust, and so it's going to create steam rapidly. So when we get that steam done, then we're going to go up. This is a turbine, just a standard steam-like turbine that power plants use everywhere. And so that steam is going to create pressure to turn this turbine, just like it does in a regular power plant, and it's going to use the exhaust. That comes up, and it's not located here, but it comes up through here and it ends up in the turbine itself. So we have steam and exhaust coming from the pistons that actually power the turbine. And so we're powering the turbine not only with the crankshaft here, which is turning the generator, but we're also this turbine is attached to the shaft, and it's going to power the generator as well. So once that's done, then we have loose gas here that has still quite a lot of pressure in it and a lot of heat in it. And we're going to use a little bit of an auger-like device here that's probably going to be attached to the turbine itself, and it will be a short little device, and that separates the pressure that the turbine is releasing from the pressure that is being caused in the secondary turbine. These are not the same, and to avoid backflow, we just put a little device in here that separates that. That's what that little auger is for. Secondary turbine runs another generator, or comes back in some form or fashion to this one, and then of course we go out. The exhaust goes out and runs a little turbocharger that pushes air into the fan. That's going to come down and push inlet combustion air into the pistons. That ductwork is not shown, and there's a collar around the piston here with a little slots in the front of the cylinder, so that it actually feeds air into the piston that way. So air comes down, it's fan forced, generally speaking. The little collar turns, or it steps, or it moves back and forth, and that opens the slots, and air comes in, fuel comes in, it's ignited, and the process repeats. So that's the basic machine, a basic two cycle machine with the locomotive style steam generator on it. There's another version that's coming with power plant steam generator coming. So we'll leave that there. It may help to get an idea of how the gases go. We have a line here from the fan that was mentioned that comes down here and it runs into the collars that put combustion air in and fuel mixture into the piston. And so once the piston ignites, the exhaust goes through the vanes of the little turbine vanes of the rotary valve, and then that exhaust comes up through the steam generator along with the blue, we'll call the blue water. And so the water and steam are released just before the turbine, and then they come out and they run through the secondary turbine and up. So perhaps that helps a little bit, I'm not sure. In the OES engine design, this is what I mean by stacked gearing. You can see we just have a housing, it goes around here. We have a bearing that takes up the weight. Then we have ring gears here, and a pinion here with shafts that go out through the side of the housing to hook up to the various elements that are going to drive it. There's another ring gear on top of this one. It's all on P to the same shaft. This is another pinion gear that goes out another side to something that's driven, and another ring gear, and another pinion, and another shaft that goes out, and so on. That's basically all there is to it. Alright, in the major industrial application of this particular OES machine, we have this is a very rough drawing. So this is an OES machine, it just sits on the side on the floor. This is an OES machine, sits on the side. And this pink pair on the back side is a vertical version of the OES machine that is just drawn for effect. It can, this can be tilted if you want to. But the end result is that we're going to create electricity in these machines, which each have a generator at the bottom of them. So the exhaust from the two-cycle machine here is directed into the chimney, which is a steam generator, and like a power plant would have. And so we're going to use the heat from the burning of fossil fuels in these pistons to apply heat to the steam generation in the piping here in this chimney. So once we have created that steam, the steam is then directed through piping down into the turbine, and so the turbine can be part of the machine or it can be separate, whatever suits you better. But the end result is that steam at 500 degrees has about 700 psi. Pressure pounds per square inch, and steam at 700 degrees Fahrenheit has about 3,200 psi. So dependent upon how much heat you put into the steam generator defines and decides how much pressure you get out of the steam generator. And we limit it to more or less 3,200 psi because of the various functions and realities of how the steam moves. But the end result is that for the extreme replacement of a power plant, this is the most likely arrangement. And it would be you have a central steam generator chimney, and the machines or the OS machines would be positioned around it like spokes of a wheel. So if you have 5 or 6 of the machines all focusing heat energy into the steam generator, you're going to create a lot of steam. And you can use that steam, you can separate that out to just use steam in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, however many of these motors you have available. So one of the things about, to mention in a 2-cycle, if we burn coal, what we get is an expanded volume of air for that fire to fully engage itself. In a 4-cycle, it has a very, very small volume, which gives it as much power as it can. But that means that the process of the burn is limited. So if we create a bigger volume, we have a better chance of actually creating a full clean burn as much as is possible. And then when we push the combusted gases back into itself, we also have the opportunity to turbulently expand that clean burn and make it as clean as we possibly can. Carbon dioxide is a result or greenhouse gases is a result of the combustion process. But the end result is that without the combustion process, we're not creating greenhouse gases. So how many times we use fossil fuel matters. How many times you take a hot water heat shower matters. How you what you air conditioning matters. Everything matters. We have to make better decisions. Anyway, this is a use of fossil fuel to create steam, to create electricity, and it should be a much more green or better for the Earth method of creating that electricity. I don't know if you can read that, but it's actually very important too. It says 1 gallon of gasoline requires 14.7 times its weight in air to burn it. So 18 pounds of oxygen are used in the amount of air that we breathe at sea level. So I've created what I call an OES engine for you, as I think that will help you with your major problems with energy, at least. We'll have to see, but the end result of it is that it is not more important than all the other things that we face. And human population is certainly at the top of the list of many extinction level events. 1% increase in human population. There's supposed to be 8.2 billion people on Earth today. And that's probably a low estimate. But 8.2 billion people means, just 1% of that is take 2 zeros off the end of it. So that's 82 million people more per year that are born that we have to feed and water and so forth. Or 82 nations have to make room for 1 million more mouths to feed every single year. And of course that number goes up each year depending upon all other things. Or more correctly, that would be 10 people more, 10 babies born more than deaths per year per 1,000 people. Think about that. 10 babies per 1,000 people more is 82 million more people, or 12 babies per 1,000 more is 100 million more people, or 100 nations have to make room for 1 million more lives to feed, more human lives to feed. And of course, they want space, which means that the habitat of every living thing on Earth is overrun and ruined. They need water, which means that it will run out because it's a finite world. They need food, which means that enormous threats and consequences of human invasion into all of nature is constant. And while you think that everything is good about genetically altering your food, the end result is that you're removing the ability, you're making it sterile so that it doesn't use any energy for that, and you're making it taking away all its immunity from disease, which means that you'll end up with species like grass itself, which is, oats and wheats and barley and corn and everything else that we survive with, or our livestock survives with, it's all at risk. Everything. Because the universities believe they can play God, and of course they can't. So aquifers collapse. If you run them dry, they collapse and they turn into rock, and then you can't use them anymore. They won't store water for you anymore. Mexico City is an example of that. Los Angeles is an example of that. The future of every child is, as with your wildfires. Take a look at it. You said, let the children fend for themselves, but of course if you steal every resource that they need and throw it in the garbage, you are their killers. Simple as that. You are their killers. So, the universities have led you to believe that there is no consequences to the disgrace of your lives. You can't take everything and say that there are no consequences for that. You can't take every debt and say let the children pay. You can't take weapons of mass destruction and spread them throughout the world and not expect that they will be used, because they will be used. Particularly as the world becomes more and more crowded. There is no alternative to that. Kill 1 billion people and there's still 7.2 billion left today. 7.2 billion people left today after you kill 1 billion of them. Do you think that seems like a big number? Well, it's not really. Still 7.2 billion people left. In 50 years ago, there was 4 billion people, more or less. So 50 years later, 4.2 billion people added. Think about that. You have no possibility of survival without change. And of course, as sheep, which means that the university is your God, that the university tells you what you believe, the university tells you what you fear, the university tells you what your government will be, and tells you what media is, and tells you what everything is, because the university is your God, but they're just former classmates. That's all they are. They're just former classmates. You take away the blanket of where they hide, and all you got left is former classmates. Just people just like you and me. Former classmates, not gods. And you let them mutilate life. They tell you, it is the curse of university and their religion of evolution, that everything is chaos, so that we don't have to worry about anything. It's just all chaos. But the reality of it is, it's not chaos, it's thought. Everything is built with thought. What did you not build by thinking first? You cannot build without thinking. And yet, nothing is created without thought. Thought is the understanding of life. Thought is where freedom comes from. And all of the rest. They're genetic. They say they can mutilate every form of life on Earth. Nature is genetics, and your universities are injecting chaos into every single thing they can find, believing that they can create new life by just mixing up the genetics of every life. They're literally taking genetics from fish and spiders and everything, throwing it into human life. And if you don't believe that, you're just a fool. But then you're a fool for letting them try. You're a fool for letting them try to ignite sunfire on Earth, because they claim that they know how the sun works, that they don't know anything. They denied every law of life, every law of the universe, every law of everything, to claim that they know how the sun works. It's a 1,000,000-mile long flame. They can't see within it. They don't know what they're doing. And they're going to ignite fire. Let's burn atoms to avoid the consequences of burning fossil fuel. But the end result is that if you ignite atoms just like the sun is burning atoms, you end up with a world that is on fire just like the sun, because you can't put it out. You can't put out a wildfire, as is Los Angeles proves again and again and again. You can't put out a wildfire. And they say that the sun has million-mile-long flames, 4 times the distance to the moon. Think about that. Wrong means they incinerate you. And of course, even if they ignited it, and even if they were able to control it, they can't control the radiation that it would produce. It will melt you. So failing change, extinction is absolutely certain. Curse of war is absolutely certain. As every human being screams, I want more, and there isn't nothing left. Because you took it all and you throw it in the garbage. So the world ends, because that's what you chose. And as we wait to die, cannibalism will certainly come. And there won't be a bit of mercy for you, because you made your own hell. So I plainly tell you, unless you want to die and let all the extinction events, a trillion tons of pollution or a quadrillion tons of poison, whatever the hell it is, it's way beyond what you're told. Way beyond what you're told. And is far more dangerous than you can even imagine. If the oceans die because you polluted and you poisoned them, 1 in 8 people that are depending on fish for food will die. And that's 1 billion people lost, and you can't afford that. And then of course every seed for the future will be 8. Your end will be just like a wildfire. Can't happen to us. But oh no, it did. And of course that means that those people who are in Los Angeles, for instance, where the wildfires burned, they are now without a job, they are now without a home, they are now homeless and dependent upon others to even let them have food, and maybe they can get water, and some of them can't. And they're going to move, and they're going to take yours, because they will die if they don't, just like all the other immigrants do. No place for us here. We have to go to you, to yours, to make you pay for us. And of course, humanity doesn't like that. So they end up hiring people like Trump who say, I can make them move. Just like Hitler came and said, I can take the Jews away. And of course, he even offered let the world take all those millions of Jews. And there was 6 million Jews supposedly died in the Holocaust. That means there were more. And of course, if the world said, sure, bring them here, then of course that means that they immigrated there and they took your resources and they took your hope for, I'm going to buy this property or whatever it is. And that ends so because the competition is that much more stiff, that much more immense, overwhelming. So we have to have other solutions than what people have created so far. Your world has changed whether you like it or not. Your world has changed. Too many people, too many threats, too many everything. Your money is bad. Did you know there was at least claims of $1.2 quadrillion in the world just in derivatives, which means bad credit. This is what they spent for the bad credit. And of course, bad credit, when you buy bad credit, you don't pay what the actual number was. You pay a percentage of that, a small percentage. And that's only a part of all the numbers that you or your universities created to hide the fact that there is no reality here. It's all a game. It's all let's play. It's all let's make the children pay. And of course the children can't pay. And when you take away all their resources, they're just going to die. So every child that you see is going to die from what you did and did not do. And the university have collected every horrifying disease, every poison they can find, and distributed it throughout the world because they intend to threaten you with that. They intend to keep you at bay with that. They intend to keep their lives the way they want it to be by threatening you with what they can do. by making horrifying diseases. And of course, once they find a vaccine that actually works for them, COVID is not a vaccine, but once they find a vaccine for the real threats, they're going to release it and let you die. And they'll sell you a vaccine, sure, for whatever money you have, if they want to. That doesn't mean it's actually worth anything. And they expect that AI will be the robots of their army, so they can keep you at bay with that and all the rest. This is an overpopulated world. You have to start feeding the oceans or it's going to die. Every life in there is going to die because you use trawlers to find them now. Find every fish that can be found. And you mop them all up. You take every last one so they cannot repopulate the ocean, so the ocean becomes dead. And all the poisons become dead. And all your coral reefs become dead. And all your everything becomes dead. Because that's what you chose. So, we bail the cost of living. We've chosen as humanity on earth to be our own worst enemies. We have, in this American nation, will let the insurgency of university as God. University decides. University is the expert. University is the government. University everything. There is no such thing as Republican or Democrat. It's all the university. The diploma decides, because you can't be a leader without a diploma. They control that, just like they control human resources. So that you can't have any job if you don't have the diploma that they want. And you can't, they sold you out. They sold you out. They sold everything that somebody else wanted, because to keep the lie going, they had to provide something to foreigners who want more and more and more. And of course now we have major immigration. But that's because of overpopulation. That's because you refuse to accept the realities of our new world. Not the claim that nothing has changed, but our new world. So I've provided for you an engine that will help you with electrical generation if you use it. We have to prove that will be true before we can actually qualify that. But there is no such thing as igniting sunfire on Earth. One ignition, and you're dead because you can't put it out. And the university says, well, there's not enough gravity here. That's a lie. And the university says, well, if nature dies, evolution will make something else in 1 billion years or so. Fools. So in the four-cycle OES engine, and OES just really stands for rotating valve. Well, more than that. Anyway, this is basic. This is the ring structure of the motor, and this is the central shaft, and this is just a housing around it, and this represents the valve that turns in the middle. These are pistons, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just for show. Doesn't indicate, and these are gearboxes. These little lines here represent just the crankshaft coming out, the piston rod coming out that attaches to the piston that goes back and forth here. And the gearboxes are tied together. So the basic element of this particular motor is that we're going to intake air on the bottom half of the valve. This is a valve and it has little vanes in it, fan-like vanes in it, to suck in air and push it into the piston area. This is a piston area here and here with a little X in it. So air comes in through the bottom half of the valve, and there's a corresponding opening in the bottom half of the valve. When it aligns, it opens for into the cylinder, and the timing takes care of it from there. So it explodes, and then it goes to the upper half of the valve. This is a dividing plate here. And then it goes through a turbine or a turbocharger, and it goes out as hot. So, and this is just a structure to hold it in place. This is just for show. It's not anything more than that. So that it's clear how the gearing works actually. These are 3 or 4 tier gearing boxes. And this is the primary shaft that goes through the machine. This is two actual motors that are joined together in the middle. This is just the center shaft, and you wouldn't see that. So hot air is as it is exhausted, the combustion gas comes up, runs the turbocharger, and goes out through the chimney. But it turns the forced air and forced air for inlet comes in through these inlets here and here, and of course this is just a demonstration of flow patterns. So we have in this particular case 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cylinders showing these are pistons. Each one of these are pistons, and these green lines indicate a drive line from the piston to the gearbox. So all these gearboxes are tied to the primary shaft, which then runs whatever it is that you're trying to run. These little areas here are the drive line gearboxes. It's just a right angle drive. And just imagine there's a flywheel and a piston rod and a crankshaft here and here. So that's basically the bottom line of it. The difference between 4-cycle and 2-cycle essentially is that while 2-cycle collects about 80%, 80 to 90% of its power from the turbine that was going to be influenced by steam and what have you, the 4-cycle gathers all its power from the gearbox turning the shaft here. So and of course the element of that is that you can get or should be able to get a 10 to 20% rise in power output from a 2-cycle power plant, and you should be able to get a rise in power from these. These are independent pistons, and they can be joined with a clutch here somewhere in the drive line that disconnects this particular piston or this particular piston or that one or whatever it is that you want to disconnect, and then that way you don't need you're not creating more power than you need. So that's the basic concept. Each piston can be individually locked in or individually taken out to create more efficiency. So I have decided to try to explain the 4-cycle OES engine valve advance. This is a rough drawing. Bear with me. So this is the central shaft, the primary core shaft that goes up all the way to the top. This is just a footing for it, and the drawing is as simple as possible. So this is a moving, rotating platform, and these are just guides. They're just slides that allow the thing to rotate inside the slides, and these are hydraulic cylinders that move it up and down. So this is pushed here, this moves up, and on this side we see that the arm goes up. That ring should not be there. Should go up, and it encounters this angular motion on the shaft, and as it goes up it twists the valve. This is the valve, and as it goes up it twists the valve back and forth a little bit to change the valve setting on how it relates to the cylinders, the pistons themselves. So the pistons are out here and are all the way around it, and so that's how one side works. And then the other side, the little sleeve here goes up and down, and it pushes the push arm and which rotates the angular gear here. And in this case, this is a stationary ring gear that it attached to the primary shaft that it pushes against. So it does the same thing. This is just one version. This is another version of that. That's all there is to it. It just changes the shaft position in relation to the actual turning core shaft, primary shaft, and it changes the position of the valve as it interrelates to the pistons. You need to understand that one of the biggest frauds in all of human history is the idea that They can combine, is said to combine two hydrogen atoms into a helium atom. That's their claim to make it safe, so that you wouldn't complain. But if that were true, the sun would be producing enormous amounts of helium. And it's called a rare earth element for a reason. There is no helium to be found on the sun, or terribly, terribly little. And it doesn't exist as a cause for anything associated with how the sun works. You need to understand that simply. And you need to know it was a lie. And in 2012 at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, they proved that it didn't work. They proved that it couldn't happen. They proved that their machine, which is supposedly 180 million degrees Fahrenheit hot, 180 million, and about 500,000 psi, pounds per square inch, on a small little target, couldn't do it. That doesn't mean they can't ignite a nuclear fire. It just means that there is no such thing as fusion. So if you want to know more about the OES engine, for instance, you can go to jamesfoster.com, and it's there. It's James, JamesFosterBur.com. That's all. You want to play God, and how much they're going to steal, and how to control the government, and what to do with media, and all of it. There isn't any single solitary thing that media isn't leadership of. You need to understand that as well, and review their actual actions, so that we can identify what is or is not wrong with this world before it is the final coffin, or the final nail in your coffin, and you don't get to decide anymore. You created hell on earth by your decisions, by allowing the cult of university as God to play games and to destroy life and world. Nothing tells that more than the claim of fusion, which is a complete lie. It is an atomic fire, and we can't extinguish it. They're going to incinerate you. And I ask you to investigate that. Make them prove it is not so, because the cost of being wrong is the ignition of the same fire here as is on the sun, which is exactly what they claim they're going to do. Think about that. A 1,000,000-mile long flame, at least 10,000 degrees centigrade, and it's where you live, with radiation that will melt you in an instant if you're too close. Wake up. Wake up. Stop being a cult. Stop being a worshiper of fools. Start understanding that the cost of being wrong is more than you can bear. And stop it. It's your job. That's what life is. Live or die. So you want global warming to stop, even though a lot of people will not admit to it. The amount of sea ice absolutely proves that global warming exists. It's the amount of heating degree days per year, not the claim of, it's cold today or it's not cold today. We are responsible for that in every single way. We are not void of the responsibility of what we do. Every time you get in your car, you add to the global heat. Every time you burn anything, you add to the global heat. And that includes forest fires that are set by terrorists in this nation. And you don't even, you put up a fence for that. The burning fuel is lifted physically into the air so the wind can catch it and throw it onto the screen, where it stays when heavy with fuel to burn, but falls when the fuel source is basically used up or the wind allows it to drop. Chicken wire fence will stop most of the damage. This world is in crisis. believe it or not. The atmosphere of the Earth has weight, and the atmosphere of the Earth runs around this planet in synchronous motion. And if that atmosphere becomes loose or becomes unattached to the planet, we immediately get massive amounts of wind. And since the planet has, from its beginning, it was attached by the amount of plant life that the Earth grew. And that's why that plant life was destroyed to give less strenuous plants an opportunity to survive. At any rate, what we have today is that trees keep the atmosphere attached to this Earth. Believe it or not, you have leaves that fall down in the fall, and you clean them up, and they have weight. And wind and turbulence of that leaves, they pick them up, and the wind picks up the weight, and it keeps the atmosphere attached to this planet. So you have destroyed all the trees, basically cut down all the forests. And our planet is, of course, at that point ready to disengage, just like all the other planets in this solar system that have roughly 700 mile per hour winds. We cannot afford to be wrong about that. And, our opportunity to, plant enough trees and wait 100 years for them to grow without cutting them down or burning them up is just a hope. So you are responsible for the hell that you create. There is no respect for life, or you wouldn't mutilate it, or allow people to mutilate it. None. That's extreme arrogance. Extreme. They're people who believe they can play God, such as trying to ignite the same fire here as is on the sun. A million-mile flame. Over 10,000 degrees at least centigrade. And you still have no clue. Arrogant. So apathetic of life and earth that it is impossible to quantify. So disrespectful to the fact that you were given this time to decide who you wanted to be, even for an eternity. And yes, there is an eternity to come, even if you don't believe that, because the fact is that that thought creates the basis of our life. Without thought, you have no freedom. Without thought, you have no choice. Without thought, you have no existence. You don't know you exist. You have to have thought to know that you exist. And thought is not a portion or part of our brain. That's just the means of measuring how our time exists. So thought is an entirely different kind of an environment, and it exists on its own. And there are forces that have to be dealt with, and time is about force. It's about motion, and motion is energy, or it's called kinetic energy. This has motion because it's in motion. And unlike the Einstein theory of energy is caused by motion, mass times speed, that's motion. The reality of motion is what caused the motion to exist in the first place, not the consequences of that motion, but what caused the motion to exist in the first place. And that's a matter of forces. So that too is completely different than bodies. Forces are a form of actual what shapes the universe. And we have a need to recognize that you don't have the resources to rebuild such things as Los Angeles. If you don't leave the trees and the forest alone, there will be the end to life on Earth. The atmosphere will detach, every chain of life will be lost, everything. You don't have even steel. Your last steel plant in America has been thrown away. Everything that life depends upon has been thrown away or ruined or destroyed or whatever it is, because the universities all said, All we need is numbers or the money. All they need is the currency. And they counterfeited every bit of currency that was available. They threw it away. They destroyed it. $100 trillion of debt is what America owes. That's $1 million per each and every one of 100 million people. And of course, they to pay their debts, they created inflation, which is the amount of currency that has been generated. Roughly $500 trillion in the last 20 years or so. And that's a inflation rate of $5 million for each and every one over those 20 years, or $4 million per each and every one of 100 million people over the last 20 years. That's the actual inflation rate in America. It's all a lie. It's all a house of cards. It is the insanity of letting university decide. They think they're God, and as God they think there are no consequences for their actions. And as God they think fantasy and every delusion, every imaginable thing they can find is just fine. It's all they have to do, just imagine, and it's all good. But that ain't so. And of course, they give you the little media clips that say, we're gods, my God, we know everything. But they don't. They just lie. So weed them out, find who is a value and who is not, and return to reality, because you have no choice. Only truth can survive. That's as simple as that. Only truth can survive. And that's true of your position today, it's true of your position 50 years ago, it's true of your eternity as well. Only truth will survive. So find what is true, remove what is a lie, be aware of the cost of being wrong, and fight for your world, because otherwise you're going to be extinct. That's what the evidence says. You don't have to believe it. It's what the evidence says, and truth will decide. It doesn't matter what you believe. Truth will decide. If the evidence can prove that you can keep on doing what you're doing, then you live. But if the evidence proves that everything you do is extinction to this earth, a threat, then you're going to die. And that, of course, is what the reality of your evidence says. You're going to be extinct. And like a wildfire, it comes quickly, and it comes ferociously, and it will not back down. Make a better choice. The wisdom to change life on earth, the wisdom to create a new world order so that we can survive as a world. We are all in this together. There's no such thing as just me or you involved in igniting the planet on fire or mutilating all life, or no resources left, or every child dies, or the ocean is dead, or any of that. We have to do it together. In America, that simple matter is we have to accept the order of law, which allows us to use redress. In other words, we the people demand a courtroom so that we can investigate what is or is not true. Don't believe. Not what I say, not what anybody says. Don't believe. Choose to find what is true as best we can. And let the evidence decide. That's the point. The evidence decides by what truth will allow for us to understand. So, given that, and given the discipline that we need law to rule over us rather than leaders, changes our world, and using limited capitalism to review who is in charge of this life and this world changes everything, because limited capitalism means that we're going to set limits and boundaries as a nation about this is how much money you can earn in a year, and this is how much property you can own, and it should of course be across the world itself, because too much money ends up as an army. Too much money governs governments. Too much money tramples on the freedom of everyone. In other words, we have to defend ourselves from those who are trying to take everything. Of course, as history proves, is constant. It's what men do. They play the game, and they want to take everything to prove that they played the game, that they are the superior ones. And of course, they're not. They're just animals. So we need different leadership. And the only different leadership that we can find, the only different leadership that exists, is that let's try women to lead, not because I think they're better or anything, just because they're different. And while men choose war as their last resort, women, or at least the majority of women, understand that law is their only last resort. Because if you don't have the physical force to make them do what you want to do, you have to have the law to make them do what life needs them to do. And there's a very big difference in that. So we need to identify what is true. We use redress, we use the courtroom to prove what this is the best we could do. This is the evidence as best we could understand it. And these are the decisions that we can enforce by the law that we create. So that's what wisdom would do. That's what law is for. That's what understanding the realm of order is about, and the discipline to make it happen. So that is your choice. They're going to create war if you don't, and they're going to cause your own extinction. You will end up in hell. Or Hades, either one, if you don't. Not because I say so, you don't have to believe that, not because it's a religious this or that or anything else, but because the evidence proves that we're on the edge of our own extinction. Everything you do is based upon the lies of what universities teach. There is no such thing as evolution. There is no such thing as controlling the same fire as is on the sun. There is no such thing as we're going to find a cure for every disease. That is just not true. They're going to create diseases, just like they say 4 in 10 are going to have cancer in their lifetime. Well, the reason we have cancer is because we got into chemicals that they made. And endless threats exist. Do what you can, the best you legally can, and accept the consequences because we have no other choice. Humanity is releasing poison by the trillion ton on top of every water supply, in every water supply, poisoning everything on Earth, everything in the ocean, everything in the atmosphere. You are the creators of hell. And hell is what people did. The consequences of their truth. And of course, if you ignite this same fire here as is on the sun, you create Hades, which is the terrorizing of life for an eternity, basically. Or if you want to go, say, it's living on the sun. Can you live on the sun? No, you can't. So we need to find a way to wake you up, because the end result is that cults are the extreme worst example of belief that there is. And of course, you are a cult. You believe that the university can be God. You believe that in evolution that we can inject as much chaos into life as we could want to, just like you believed that you could release as much heat as you wanted to, or you believe everything that the universe says, because media enforces that every single day. The media enforces the university as God. Governments enforce the university as God. Courts enforce university as God. They're the expert. They get to decide. Or in other words, as communism takes over the world, as it always has tried to do. Which means that only a tiny few decide everything for you. That's what the expert is. Only the expert, only the tiny few decide everything for you. And of course then there's AI, which is the means or method of trying to create a robot army to control you. And everything on Earth dissolves into a maze of human waste. It is human waste. So we have to start finding a way to make you realize that only the law can lead us now. We have to have a law, not leaders. The law says that you can't cross, one nation can't cross its borders and attack another nation, enforced by international policing. The law says that leaders cannot draft themselves an army by creating any kind of fear. That's, against the law. The law is our friend, if we want it to be, by enforcing it. Not with rules that identify this particular person can be killed or whatever it is, but by the law that says all of us are responsible for this. And of course that's not what you do, because pride doesn't like law. Pride wants to be the superior one, and of course what the hell is that? It's just a game. You lose. It's just a game. So, but that's what you want. To your shame. And of course power wants to make you cry. I'm so silly. But it's just power. And it wants it's just another form of hate. So we have to separate hate from love, because those are the actual choices of human life. You can either love, which is respect for life, and actual honest acceptance of the value of life, and a return gift, so to speak, for the miracles of life, because we actually owe that. And we know we owe that because life is better than, or more precious than anything else other than love. Without love, there is no real reason to live. And that, of course, is where hate fails itself and wants to kill itself and lives by consuming love just to prove they can. And then, of course, there's all the people in the middle who want to be animals. I want what I want. That's all that I want. I don't want anything else. I want what I want. That's what animals do. They want what they want. And that, of course, is what humans do. But the end result of want is that you will be left behind. Eternity doesn't care for you. Only truth matters to eternity. And there is no compromise to truth. There really isn't. Either it is or it is not true. And so what we end up with is, in human terms, is how much do we compromise? Because we don't know exactly what is true. We don't know exactly what the purity of truth is, and therefore we cannot make up our mind. So people decide, well, I better not be wrong. And they compromise. But that's not functionally true. That's not functionally what you need to do, because if we decide to go halfway, we just end up with lies. It's not halfway to truth that we go, it's halfway to the lies that we go. And all the lies are built upon what you want. If you don't want it, you don't believe it, and if you don't believe it, you don't let that control your life. So people believe so they can have their life controlled by what they believe. And of course that simplifies life. I believe, therefore it is, and that's all I need to believe, and on it goes. But that, of course, is where depression and all those things come from, because your belief is just a want, and a want is not a truth. So even if some degree of truth exists in your belief, it's still not basically true. So we have to learn what is true, particularly about our planets, and about our living, and about what the universities are doing to our world and our lives and our everything, because we are responsible for the future. We decide what the future will be by the things we do today, just as those who came before us decided what our future would be by what they did do. And of course, the primary of that is that they decided in the last 50 years in particular to be as greedy and selfish as they could possibly be, ransacking the world and raping the future and destroying every living thing so they could throw their toys and their prizes and their trinkets into the garbage. That's what you do. You fight for some kind of deviation from time, and you throw it in the garbage. It's a game, and humanity loves games. But the end result of a game is that it's not about life, it's about a game. And the end result of being human is that we all die, and when we die, we end up with an eternity that we face. Whatever you believe that eternity will be, that's what we face. And if you believe you're going to be thrown away, dust to dust, then you believe that you will vanish from the earth forever, from existence forever, and say, well, that's all I need to know. And of course, the constant of university expertise is that there is no future for life, there is no eternity, so all we have to do is worry about today. And since all I have to do is worry about today, we're going to rip apart and steal the future from every child so that we can have more today, which is what they do. So, if you were a child, if you were young, you need to wake up. The future is certain. It's dead. So if you want to live, you're going to have to make a decision to fight for it. You literally have to make a decision to fight for it. Because if you throw away every resource, there is no resource left. This is a finite planet. Look around you. There's no place to go beyond this earth. We're not going to the moon. We're not going to harvest the moon. We're not going to live on Mars. We're not going to go to other planets. None of that is true. You don't have oxygen for that. You can't take oxygen along for that. It's not going to happen. They're playing games with you. And of course, the university has to have jobs for their graduates, and as a consequence, we have millions or 100 million people employed by lies. They're not helping life. Damn little. We need a thorough search for what is true. And if we don't get it, we end up with a dead world, dead life, and a dead future. So, wake up, stop believing everything the university tells you, and search for truth with redress of grievances in this USA, which gives we the people the power to say, no, we will decide now. Think about it. Your world is dead. Blanket statements like it's all the university's fault is just like Trump saying that it's all the immigrants' fault in large extent, because that allows someone to point to another group and say, these are the enemy. And of course that means that we can fight the enemy because they're different than us, so to speak. But of course it's never true. And the university is not all at fault. We, the people, the humanity of this earth, are certainly a big, big part of that fault. So you need to understand that. You need to understand that a 1% increase in the population, that's one more birth over deaths per 100 people, just one more per 100 people, equals 82 million more mouths to feed. That's the math of 8.2 billion people. So 82 nations have to make room for 1 million more mouths to feed every single year. And of course that's an attack on every source of prey animal, every source of prey food, everything that we require to live, which includes water, and includes space, and includes habitat, and includes everything else. It's all our fault. Yeah, governments point to other nations so they can avoid the reality of what they did or did not do. And they create war, so we'll just go take theirs. And of course that won't work, because weapons of mass destruction in particular means that none of us will live. The universities have tremendous amounts of biological weapons to release. None of us will live. We have to make different choices, and we have to stop the people who hate us. We have to identify who they are, and we have to make them separate from us. So these are just some of the things that you have to do. Some of the things that you should understand something with clarity, that while I don't condemn the university as a blanket statement, there are a lot of those that try to do what they can do, and there are a lot of those that just want to play God. And there's a difference. What we need to understand, or what you need to understand, is that evolution is a complete lie. It's their religion, it's their cult. But it's a complete lie, because you know, as well as I do, that your body cannot function without everything it has. It needs all the organs. It needs, blood for your heart. It needs everything at the same time. There's no, building a body of life one piece at a time. There's no, this looks like that. Or there is, but that isn't proof of anything. So evolution does not exist. Let them prove it. Make them prove it. It does not exist, even though they teach it. You should understand that Noah's flood actually did exist. Not because it's religious, but because the evidence is real. Fossil fuel requires the gathering of life sources. Trees and things have to be gathered together and then buried in mass, or there is no such thing as fossil fuel. And it's buried under, some of it is buried under thousands of feet of dirt. Nothing that we know of can do that except for a flood. And because of the massive amount of fossil fuel that there is, and we know there is, and we have burned, we know it was a worldwide flood. So they are wrong with that too. They are wrong with the idea that the core of the sun can be extremely hot. It cannot, because thermodynamics do not allow that. It is a law. There is no such thing as magic to that. And if all the internal parts of the sun were on fire, it would burn that fuel in short order, and the sun would go out. It's not it. Make them prove they can control the fire, that same fire that's on the sun. The list is very long. So let's review. You need to understand that evolution does matter, because it is the basis of all that geneticists do. They say that they can do anything they want to with the DNA or RNA. The building blocks of our lives, the building blocks that are nature itself, they say they can inject any amount of chaos into it that they want to, because according to evolution, chaos built life, so it doesn't matter. And I asked some doctorate students, what are you going to do when order and discipline in nature fails? And it says, not to worry. In 1 billion years or so, evolution will create something else. So are you willing to wait 1 billion years? So you need to understand that, while seed production has increased because of genetics, there isn't any doubt about that. The fact of the matter is that they've taken away most of the immunity of the plants to achieve that. Because if the plant is not working to defend itself, then it has, more energy and more ability to create seed. They've also removed the ability for the plant to repopulate itself, which means it's sterile. And that means that you are completely dependent upon the people who hold the seed, the mother plants are just overrun. And the truth of the matter is that, like corn, which is probably the most genetically altered of any plant, it represents a grass seed. It's a type of grass. And the end result of removing all immunity from the plant to increase the yield is that the plant becomes vulnerable to any pandemic disease that comes along. So if we are not able to stop the pandemic disease, that pandemic runs throughout the grass seeds of this world, or it can in a pandemic, because they're all interrelated. And that means that oats are similar to corn, and so is wheat, and so is rice, and so is everything that we depend upon for food. They are, every part of genetics is about what you do or do not love about life, or your body of life. So, they're injecting chaos, and they want to create, humans with fish lungs and the entire gamut of let's make life a toy. That's their purpose. Let's make life a toy. And a trophy. Look at what we can do. We are gods. But of course they're not. You need to understand that while the university has some value, it is also the representative called Satan in this world. And that's not used as a religious term. That's used as the people, or the arrogance and the apathy and the disrespect that is destroying our world and making it extinct. So we need to have a moratorium. We need to investigate. We need to prove what is or is not true and the cost of being wrong. Because there are some things we just can't allow them to be wrong at. And we're sitting at the very last of the very last of the very last edge of what life can endure. That's just the truth of it. We have leaders that want to create war. We have leaders that want to put every nation under their control. We have leaders who believe that they can use weapons of mass destruction. We have a million people in universities with access to biological warfare, release the disease, and humanity fails to defend itself. This is not a game. The game is over. The game is dead. You have spent the last 50 years being told by the universities that there are no consequences for us. Let the children pay. But of course, that's just not true. Their fantasies and delusions and imagination are at the core of what fails life and world. You should remember that COVID did not exist without media. And you should remember that the probable $1 billion that they were paid was only 1/6,000th of the $6 trillion that Trump okayed for the use of an experimental vaccine that may or may not have mutilated human life forever. That's the price of believe, fear, obey. And of course, $6 trillion was paid for 100 million vaccine doses. That's $60,000 per dose. So every time each person who got a shot in the initial phase paid, or let the government or let your taxes pay $60,000, which of course doesn't exist. But you paid it anyway because you believed in the lies of numbers. The greatest liar that ever was, I guess, is probably a number. Because a number doesn't represent any wealth at all. It's just a number. And you can have as many numbers as you want. Just put yourself $1 trillion on your bank statement. it can be there. You can believe it's there. It's right there. It's a number. Until, of course, you want to collect, and that requires resources, which soon will no longer exist. Wake up. The blanket of university knows. The cult of university is God. The complaint that government doesn't know what it's doing or how to do it is all a result of the university diploma. Or the propaganda that we continually see, which is university is God on media. A gun is the answer, and so on. Will teach you how to hate and how to steal and how to do everything that hate requires of you, is all the result of the university diploma. But the most important factor in life itself, in this day, the number one threat beyond all the rest, is that they're trying to create fusion. They're trying to ignite the same fire here as is on the sun. And it is an atomic fire. And that's just what it is. It's burning the bond that holds an atom together. And we know that we have opposite forces involved in an atom, because we know that there's a significant outward force, a push that is revealed by the atomic bomb. And we know that if that force is going to be contained, as is time, there must be an opposite and equal force, or even slightly greater force, that holds it back together. Because if we don't have that, the outward force will just escape, and it will not be a part of time. Time is a relationship of how electrons bleed off a little bit of energy from that motion. That is inside an atom. And the energy of an atom is its spinning proton, or the spinning mass inside. But what is important is that they're trying to ignite a million-mile flame, just like the sun, which burns your skin in summer, from 94 million miles away here on this earth. 130 different experiments all going on the same, because they want to replace the fossil fuel burning let's burn atoms instead, just like the sun. And of course, if you could control the flame, that would be fine, but you can't control the flame, nor can you control the radiation. So it's a fantasy, and to create their fantasy, to create the delusion that they can control it, they have produced any number of fantasies to make you believe that they know what they're doing, to hide the fact that they don't know what they're doing. They have stated that fusion is the combining of two hydrogen elements into a helium element, because the only thing they see from the sun in terms of elements are hydrogen, which is the actual ash cloud of the nuclear fire. It's all that can escape. So anyway, if every BTU the sun produced was in fact creating helium, the entire universe would be filled with helium. Or at least for your purposes, this entire solar system would be filled with helium, and helium is called rare earth because of a reason. It's not plentiful. So it's not creating helium, not a bit, or very, very little. And the end result of that is that they're wrong. It's just a lie. And they claim that the sun is made entirely, basically, of hydrogen. But then they claim that at CERN that they've created a fictitious graviton element, which lasts about 1/millionth of a second on their computer screen. And that's the only place they find it. So there is no such thing as a graviton, because there is a limit to how much mass can be spun before it flies apart. And that is what the elements are about. That's what time and atomics and so on are about. And anyway, they say that a fantasy element controls the sun with magic. It's all magic. It sucks in something, and they call that solar gravity. and they don't know what happens to the solar gravity once it's there, and so on. But the end result is they say that the core of the sun is very, very hot, which means that all of the fuel is on fire. We know it burns fuel. We feel the radiation. That means fuel is burning. Simple as that. Fuel is burning, which means that the sun has a limited lifespan, and it burns atoms, because that is what is available, and that is what can produce that kind of fire, as an example of an atomic bomb will do. And the difference between an explosion and an atomic bomb, or a fire and a explosion, is that it's very different, actually. Just like it is here on Earth, your fire is not the same as your bomb or your explosion. It's not the same. So we know that those are different. So we can have an atomic bomb and survive that because it's limited. But once you ignite fire on a planet where everything is fuel, there is no putting that out. Their claim is that gravity will extinguish the fire on its own. And that is their only solution for it. And of course there is no other solution for it, and there is no solution for it at all, because once the fire starts, it's going to burn fuel until it stops. And if it burns atoms, it's a self-sustaining plasma, which means it doesn't need anything else. There's more than enough energy being released to sustain the fire, and the fire will just consume this earth just like the sun. Now, you know, if you could understand more, I would tell you more. You can look at my websites over here, and there's miscellaneous details for the last 20 years about this everywhere. You can find it. Look for fusion or sunfire or something like that. Same, of course, is true of the claim that they can play God and genetically alter nature. They cannot. They can do a little bit, which they already have. They have automated machines now which mutilate all kinds of nature and plant pieces and bits of genetic material from one plant into a fish or into a bird or whatever the hell it is that they do. They are Satan himself, because the end result is they believe in evolution as their religion. This is the university, and their religion is evolution. And evolution says chaos made everything. And if chaos made everything, then we can put chaos into everything, and it doesn't matter because chaos will fix itself. But of course, chaos doesn't fix anything. It just destroys order and discipline down to the simplest possible form. Chaos is basically fire. So what did you know that fire creates something for you? And of course it creates some steel or whatever it is, but not without human assistance, not without things that matter. Thought creates life. That's all there is. Thought creates life. And the force to make that thought into a reality by law and by truth. At any rate, they are killing nature, preparing to incinerate the world, the Earth, entire Earth and the solar system, because the planet will blow up, and it will throw out all your atmosphere, and it will just simply destroy you. And they think they're going to save the Earth because, they can do anything without consequences. They can do anything without lies and theft, and they betray everything. They function, this entire United States of America functions by counterfeiting currency. They have created currency beyond measure because that's how they pay their debts. That's the university way. We don't have to worry about debts. Debts don't matter unless, of course, we owe them. And, of course, as you know, with university debts, they're never going to let you go. That's not the point. They own the government. They own the media. They own your schooling. They own the propaganda and the criminal organization that simply defies life and reality and truth and law, and all that is important to us. They have, simply subterfuge. So anyway, we have to control our own bankruptcy. The only way back to reality is to face it. And we have to face it with bankruptcy. And we have to control our own bankruptcy so that those who have done us all this harm do not control our bankruptcy. We have to control them instead of they control us. We do that with redress of grievances. That is the law of this land. That is the constitutional right of authority that makes us a democracy. The fact that we have decided, as we the people, to make the decision for ourselves. That's what redress means. We have made the decision to do this for ourselves. We have looked at what government employees have done and found them lacking. And that means we must do it for ourselves, to put our lives back together. That's what democracy is. We have to rule ourselves by law. If you have rules, you have a ruler. And if you have a ruler, you don't have freedom. If you remove the ruler, then you do have freedom. But you have to remove the ruler with laws. Rules control individuals. Laws control us all. Everybody equal. Nobody different. A rule, however, focuses just on you. Because that's what the righteous like. And of course, that's what power likes. And so on. So, if you wake up, maybe we could find a way to keep Earth alive and ourselves alive, but you have to stop the insanity of what is called Satan on Earth. And I say that not in a religious sense, but in the fact that arrogance and apathy and disrespect for life on Earth are not going to keep us alive. They're going to kill us with that. The university is filled with arrogance, apathy, and disrespect for life and truth and reality. Wake up. Find your life back and stop being a cult. All right, well, in terms of an OS engine to create and generate electricity, what we need to understand, or what you need to understand, is that there are a lot of experiments that are trying to bring the same fire, the same source of energy as is on the sun here to this earth. And energy, just go outside and look at the sun, 94 million miles away, and with million-mile-long flames. And their claim is, this is I don't know if you can read it or not, but it says there are over 130 experimental nuclear fusion devices operating or under construction or planned throughout the world. So this is not a game, and the idea that they can do it is entirely erroneous, because their fantasies do not comply with reality. Or more clearly, I went and asked them, what do you plan to do to control the fire? Million-mile-long flames. So they said, well, there's not enough gravity here on Earth to worry about that. It will extinguish itself. But a million-mile-long flame is not going to extinguish itself. Just like TNT and a nuclear bomb are different, so is the creation of sun energy here on Earth. It is an atomic fire. No matter what they say, it is an atomic fire. And that means that they're going to burn atoms for fuel. And that means that once they ignite atoms, it becomes a self-sustaining plasma that then continues the fire and incinerates the Earth as hell becomes Hades instead. So this is a very important thing, far more important than any electrical generation that we might do. And it is necessary for you to understand what that really means. We cannot extinguish their fire. Once it starts, we have no option to intervene. It simply goes out of control. And the difference between a fossil fuel fire and a nuclear fire is said to be 4 million times more, which makes a candle flame that you see on your table, for instance, 62 miles high in cross-reference of what 4 million times more is. 62 miles high. How are they going to handle that? They're not. They believe it'll just take care of itself. And of course it won't. And there is no backing up. Once ignition starts, that's it. So you need to stop them. You know, your world is going to burn up. It is that simple. Your world is going to burn up. There are people that are literally doing that, and they do not account for the radiation that the sun creates. A radiation that will simply melt you from 1,000 miles away. Once it is released, it cannot be undone. So you have to make up your mind whether or not you're going to allow this to happen. Because they're likely to actually accidentally ignite that fire, or not. But either way, we have no option if it starts. The sun is a it's an ongoing thing, self-sustaining. The gravity they say that they're going to use to control the fire, they don't understand what it is, don't know what it is, and it's not what they think it is. It's not. The gravity comes from separating what holds an atom together. An atom is spinning like a top. The mass inside is spinning like a top very, very fast. And it is contained by a dark energy, or the neutron, which separates it from our environment. That's how an atom works. And when they separate, because they're clashed together in a fire, they're not exploded as a bomb. They're clashed together in a fire, and that friction causes the heat that we know as the sun. And it also removes the dark energy that we know as a neutron, and that is where the solar gravity comes from. So, they don't know where atomic energy comes from. Atomic energy comes from the mass of a proton inside the atom itself that is spinning. It is spinning at enormous amounts of speed, and we bleed off a little bit of that energy with electrons to create time. So I'm just telling you, because it's our world, it's not their world, it's our world, it's not their toy, it's our world that they're trying to incinerate, and being wrong. Just like being wrong with adding chaos into genetic nature. Nature is genetics. There is no other thing. Nature is genetics. So if they're adding chaos into it, they're killing us, or they're intending to kill us. And of course they believe in evolution, as all cults do. They have to have a religion, they have to have a book. And their book is that evolution is God, and evolution is chaos. So they don't have to worry about a thing, because their God is chaos. You need to wake up, or our world, our life, our everything will be gone. Wake up. That's the method of this purpose. That's the reality of our time, and it is the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst on human earth. Because we can kill ourselves, we can kill our planet, and we cannot make it back alive. Think about it. You only have one chance left. Think about it. Who's going to be wrong? You or your God's former classmates? That's all they are, former classmates of university diploma. And you get a diploma by memorizing what you're told to memorize, mimicking what you're told to say, and repeating what you're told to do. That's how you get a diploma. And of course, that doesn't mean you're smart. It just means you're a good cult worker. Think about it. Time is running out. One ignition, 1 second, too late, and the world is dead. I spent my lifetime researching the things that matter to me, which are, the end of our world, the end of life on Earth, the end of nature. And it all begins and ends with the university as a cult. Not because I don't like them, or a superior, inferior, whatever, but because the fantasies that they use to declare what they know are basically wrong. The cost of being wrong about trying to create fusion, which is a claim that they can, create as much heat as they want without any cost, is wrong. They can't. The idea that the solar fire will just evaporate and put itself out is wrong. They can't control it. The fact that they're injecting chaos into nature is wrong. That's delusional. They are not God, and they will never be God. If we don't wake up as a world, not just me or you, as a world, they will kill us. The atmosphere of this earth, and once a fusion fire starts, or actually an atomic fire starts, the entire atmosphere of the earth will be ejected in 3 weeks or so. You will die a horrible death. And that's where the religion of rapture comes in. Instead of floating off to heaven or whatever it is you think, it's going to be sucked into the flames. Because that kind of pressure and that kind of vacuum and that kind of reality is exactly what you get. So stop believing and try to investigate. In America we use redress, or we can use redress. It is our legal authority as we the people to take over our control of government. We decide, not them. And that is a very powerful tool that's probably not available in any other nation in the world, but it is our tool. And we can use it because it is the constitutional law, and the Constitution is our government. It's not an employee that's, our government. It is our Constitution that is our government. It is the law of this land, and the law governs. It is not people that govern. It is the law that governs. So we need to understand that we have a choice. And if you rise up and simply enforce the fact that we must know what the cost of being wrong is, we must know what they're depending upon, and we must know, they're not, the whole college isn't watching over them. The professor that, some university elite decides and everybody else follows. It's just a common herd like every other herd that ever was. It's a common religion. Yeah, evolution is just a religion. And you should investigate that for its actual truth. This looks like that is not enough. That is not enough. Without every single piece of your body, your organs, your blood, your heart, your everything at the same time, it will not live. Without a mind or the software that it takes to run the body, it will not live. Everything they do is a fantasy and a delusion. And of course the people that depend upon their job and paying back the debt that they created as slaves to the university elite, they want that job, and so they just avoid it. They avoid what is true because they want that job. They want it. And you can't really blame them for that, but the cost of being wrong is our world is extinct. So, we need to remove their belief and install what is true. The evidence that we do know, that we can depend upon. And one of those certainties is that as the sun warms your skin in summer and burns it even from 94 million miles away, the cost of letting them ignite that fire here is either we burn or they can't do it. There is no containing that fire. There is no anything about that fire. It is simply the death of life on Earth, and it will be the end of the solar system as well. So you need to think for the first time in your life, because you can't just believe. The media has been teaching you it's all good because the university is God. The universe is not God. It's just a few people who are your former classmates who decided that this is the way it is. And all the rest just follow along. We have to decide the cost of being wrong, and if you're willing to gamble the entire earth, if you are willing to gamble your life, your future, your child, your everything, on whether or not they can be right or whether or not they will be wrong, go ahead. I can't stop you. Go ahead. But if you don't like the cost of being wrong, which is the end of life on earth, then you need to stop them. Or you need to at least investigate and prove what is or is not true, so that you're not just claiming to be innocent. You are not innocent. You are letting them do it. You are letting them gamble with our world and our nature and everything else. You are letting them play God. It's your fault. So make a decision to accept the responsibility, to say now it's we who will decide. It's your duty to a world that gave you life. It's your responsibility to your Creator. Make a decision and enforce. The law will decide. The law of evidence, the law of reality, the law of truth will decide what we do or what we allow them to do. It's our decision. Your decision. Make up your mind. Once again, don't believe the liars. They say that heart disease is the #1 killer in America. It's not. Old age is. And there's a really, really big difference between that. They don't account for anything. Nobody dies of old age. Think about it. And of course, there's all kinds of things wrong. Just endless. They say that the vasectomies among young men have gone up. That means they're very unhappy, basically. And that means that a vasectomy means that the chemicals that give you pleasure in sex end. That's what it means. Even though you can still do the rest, there is no chemicals, there is no happiness in it, there is no purpose in it. It's just hot, sticky work. Don't do it. Everything that, it's a university thing, and they lie about everything. So stop. Because even if you think you don't want any more sex, women don't get sex then either. There's nothing in this world that hasn't been contaminated. Try to wake up. In the search for truth, the outstanding example of love is Jesus. From the biblical version of it. His testimony or evidence of what is the difference between love and hate is absolutely clear. He represented love and respect and all things that are valuable and all things that are good and happy for life, and of course those who killed him represent all that was hate. And they killed him because he dumped over their money and gave it back to the people in the temple. And that, of course, is the primary difference between the animals of human society and the people who are alive, and spiritually alive. So I'm not a religious man. I just look for truth. So what is the truth about that statement? And the answer to that is that if we want love, we have to choose respect. If we want hate, those who want hate choose violence, and that's the basic difference. So the end result of it is that if we choose for love, we're going to choose for redress in this United States anyway, because redress is we the people decide, and we have much to decide. Because the universities are clearly the greatest or the worst or whatever you want to call it example of hate that has ever been created on earth. Arrogance, apathy, and disrespect is their calling card, And there cannot be any more clear example of that than those who are trying to, are in fact introducing chaos into life itself, into the genetic nature, which is life itself in time, or the people who are trying to ignite sunfire here on Earth, which is simply going to incinerate and destroy the entire planet, because if you bring the same fire as is on the sun here to this Earth, you get the same result. How is that not true? So nobody in the history of man, in the history of humanity itself, has ever tried to do such horrendous things. So they get the title of Satan. And that's not it's not a religious term to me, at least. It's just a matter of arrogance, apathy, and disrespect for the truth itself. If time dies. That's what it does. It ends, which means it dies. And truth lives only, or life lives by truth. There is nothing else that supports life other than truth. Truth survives, and that means life survives if it is true. But of course, you have a choice between love and hate. These are very opposite things. They do not combine together. They do not live together, except in animals who cannot choose for love or hate. They want them both. So the end result of it is that we have to decide for ourselves if we're going to let the people who are trying to ignite the same fire as is on the sun here on this Earth, million-mile-long flame, burn your skin in summer from 94 million miles away with the radiation of it. And if we're going to let them completely kill life on Earth by adding chaos to that in their religious belief of evolution. There's absolutely nothing true about evolution. Absolutely nothing. Let them prove it. Let them come forward and prove evolution is true. They have not done that. They have only said this looks like that. And so we have the consequence of a choice. Do you want to just believe, or do you want to know what is true? And of course, you can't know what is true by the evidence of university, because they lie continually. Just like COVID, they lie continually. They want you to believe whatever they want you to believe. They want you to fear whatever they want you to fear. They want you to obey whatever they want you to obey, because that gives them power over you. Just like medicine gives them power over you. You think they're going to save you, but they're not going to save you. Time dies. And eternity, whatever you believe that is, eternity starts after you die. So time really doesn't matter much. Not really. Truth matters. So we have to decide what is true for time on Earth to continue. They are going to take it away. Nothing on Earth says that so much as does the intent to bring the same fire here as is on the sun. 130 different major trillion-dollar experiments going on right now. So trying to do that very thing. So if you don't get your ass up, if you don't find a brain somewhere inside your soul, somewhere inside your heart, somewhere, then they're going to kill you. They're going to incinerate you by igniting the same million-mile-long flame here, 4 times longer, 4 times further than the moon, ignited here. You can't stop a wildfire, and it takes away everything. Just like your current method of let's just go shopping adds to the garbage of mountains and the end of life on Earth, because you took away every resource the future needs, every resource your child needs. You decided to crucify them by destroying their future. That's the cost of what you do today. And that, doesn't include the trillion tons of poison, or the quadrillion tons of pollution, or the nightmare of counterfeiting money and currency. Over $2 quadrillion just in derivatives in the world, and that was a few years ago. So there's absolutely nothing about the money in any part of the earth probably that has any value to it, because the end result is the universities have led leadership, and leadership says We don't have to worry about debts unless you owe me. And of course, they intend to hold everything. They intend to make every decision, as they're doing in this United States. Every decision is made by the expert, is made by the university. You have no say. The expert decides. So you know, you need to decide if you're going to be slaves, and you need to decide if you're going to let them treat you as insects to be stepped on, or whatever it is you think. Doesn't matter, because the university decides. So if you want to be human again, if you want to have your nation or your world back, you have to face the reality of our truth. And our truth is that nothing but lies and theft and treason and traitors and terrorists and all that is hate has been leading this world for the last 50 years. And we have to stop them. We have to use world law, which replaces leaders with law, the law that we, the world, make law. What is fair to us all. Not rules, which identifies an individual for let's kill him. But law, all of us are equal. Same for everyone. Law that replaces leaders that draft men into to service for their purpose, to make them murderers. No more of that. No, you can't draft the nation to do whatever you say. No, you are not the leader of armies. No. 10,000 times no. 10,000 times no. The law will decide. The law that we made will decide, not you. And then we have to have limited capitalism so that nobody gets to be the very rich. Nobody gets to be a billionaire. Nobody gets to own everything. Nobody gets to do any of that. We have to use limited capitalism, which means that we're going to decide as a nation, or even a world, this is the limit of what you might have and what you might earn for a year. Don't care if you earn it in a second. I don't care. But this is it for the year. No more for a year. None. Absolutely not one penny more. And of course, and there's a limit to how much you can own. Period. No more than this. This is it. No more. Because we all have a right. We all have a need. We all have the opportunity to be human, to be a participant in everything that is life or living. And you can't decide for us. We have to make the decision that we are in fact equal. We have to enforce that decision, just like we have to enforce international law. And that means we don't go attacking leaders, or we don't go attacking nations. We attack leaders. If the leader says, you know, creates a war and trespasses and causes harm to another nation, we're going to go get the leader and the tiny little few who surround him. We're going to go get them, and we're going to bring them to a criminal trial, and we're going to decide what to do with them as a world by the law that we make, because law without punishment is not law. It's only a direction. And unfortunately, hate requires punishment. There is no thing about, you know, crime is crime, but crime, the only thing that you can execute someone for is hate. If their hate is sufficient enough, then they get to be separated. Or if you can't take a chance on that, then they just get to be executed. Simple as that. If you can prove this is what they did do. No guessing, no any of that. But because hate ruins life on earth. So we have to have love in charge, and of course if you don't stand up for your life or your living or your world or your future or your child or any of it, if you don't stand up for that, if you don't accept the price of that, then you know, then hate gets to have everything. They already are taking everything with the fake and the liars and the cheaters and the thieves and the whores and everything else that university represents. There is no greater curse upon this world than is a university. And of course, you know, the people, there's the 10,000 people who want to say, they're going to save my life, you've got to save them. But the end result is you don't know what they do or don't do, and you don't believe that they're greedy or selfish, and some of them are, and some of them are wrong, and some of them will cut off your legs so they can have a bigger house. You don't know, and we need to know. We need to create for ourselves a world that is more correct for what we need, that is more fair and more truthful and more life, not death. Because the universities have created an entire world to die. The water, is dwindling. The 12 more births per 1,000 people in a year is equal to 100 million more mouths to feed per year. 100 nations have to make room for 1 million more people each per year. We have to accept the reality of our truth. We have to identify what is or is not real. We have to go to court and we have to produce the evidence of what can be proven true. We have to identify what it costs to be wrong, and we have to accept the fact that the game is over, and we have to let truth decide, not your damn want. Want is nothing. Want is belief. And belief is just based upon whatever it is you want. And of course, that has nothing to do with truth. It's just want. So we have to let truth decide, not religion or any of the other points. We have to let truth decide what we can and cannot do, what we can and cannot enforce, what we must enforce, and what we can or cannot allow for humanity to do. Because the world is no longer a toy. The world is overrun by human people. We are so many that we are invading everything and destroying every chain of life and destroying the planet and destroying the water supplies and destroying everything. We have to make a better choice. And you can hate me or love me or whatever it is you want to do, but it doesn't make any difference, because truth is truth is truth, and only the truth decides whether you live or die. It ain't going to be me and it ain't going to be you. It will be truth. And your truth of today is extinction. All the threats that you have made is extinction. Everything that you do is about extinction. Everything you've been led to believe is about extinction. Because that's what the universities have offered you. That's what the universities have led you to do. Just the fact that all your money is dissolved into nothing is a cause for war, and war means weapons of mass destruction will be used, because you kill 1 billion people, there's still 7.2 billion people left. Hardly even notice that 1 billion people are gone. And of course, if you kill 1 billion people, they will create the disease that doesn't even have to be released. It's there. It's a pandemic that will invade the world. You can't have war, not major war, and that's exactly where they're going. And you have to stop them, or you're going to die. You're going to take the world with you. You're going to let them ignite a nuclear fire. That's what the same fire as on the sun is. They burn the bond in atoms, and you let them mutilate life. That's what you get. Armageddon, which means nature in chaos. Or the apocalypse, which means a war for water, because you can only last 3 days without water. Or you're going to end up with a world without oxygen, because you let the fossil fuel burning of it destroy all the resources. Atoms, or oxygen is an atom, and it is a finite resource. I'll read it to you. Reality has proven that fighting for patents 18.944.161 and 18.952.324 are in fact, these are the OES patents, are in fact games of mazes and men, and I'm not interested in playing these games or any other element of we can take this if you don't fight. I'm just not interested in games. So I'm willing to give this to an organization of women who create the law we need, the new laws we need for life and world. not the wars of men, as history proves, is their answer to complex problems. So anyway, we'll try something different. Consequence of that reality is the truth that I am 71 years old. You know, what am I going to do with the money? And I have tinnitus, which is a big problem. So we are faced with a dying, cursed world by universities and the terrorists who try to ignite sunfire on Earth, which will just simply bring the sun here and make this Earth into a sun.